Welcome and thank you for joining today's inaugural Office of Native American Programs National Best Practice webinar featuring Lummi Nation Housing Authority. Please note that all participant lines will be muted until the Q&A portion of the call. We will provide you with instructions on how to ask a verbal question at that time. You are welcome to submit written questions during the presentation, and these will be addressed during Q&A. To send a note, select all panelists on the Send To drop-down menu of the chat panel located on the lower right-hand side of your screen. If you require technical assistance, send a note to the event producer or call our help desk at 888-796-6118. With that, I'll turn the call over to Heidi Frechette, Deputy Assistant Secretary, HUD's Office of Native American Programs. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Kosto, everyone. Wawanan, thank you so much for joining us today for the first in a series of national webinars on best practices in Indian housing. We hope to provide you with quarterly webinars covering topics such as housing development, leveraging, homeownership, youth initiatives, and energy efficiency and weatherization. Of course, we are always open to suggestions, so we've included on slide 3 an email address that you could submit suggestions for upcoming webinars. Today, we will be hearing from Diana Fair about the Lummi Nation Housing Authority's Chelangan Village, a gated community with 45 new units for housing for elders and families with high needs. It's really designed to focus on supportive services and services family need to get back on track. The property has 9 single-story, 2-bedroom duplexes for elders, 24 2-story, 3-bedroom units in pods of 4, and 12 single-story, 3- and 4-bedroom triplexes. It also has a community clubhouse, private counseling meeting spaces, community garden, playgrounds, and picnic areas. We are very proud that this great project was financed using HUD's Title VI Loan Guarantee Program and uses a tribal-wide collaborative and holistic approach to support families with wraparound services. I'm very honored today to introduce our featured guest, Diana Fair, Executive Director of the Lummi Nation Housing Authority. Diana is a member of the Lummi Nation and has been employed by the Nation Housing Authority for the past 33 years. Through her housing authority, she has created a number of social programs to support residents and help preserve the integrity of the Lummi tribal housing community. She truly is a leader in bringing transformational housing to her community. So, Diane, I'm going to turn it over to you. We look forward to hearing about this great project.
Welcome, everybody. I'm very honored to be selected to do this presentation today. We are located on the peninsula on the Puget Sound. We're about 2.5 miles north of Seattle, 30 minutes from the south of the Canadian border, near the city of Bellingham. Our traditional territory stretched from the San Juan Islands along the coast from the Fraser River into what is currently the city of Seattle. Fishing, hunting, and plant gathering constitutes mainly our subsistence for our area. Lummi Nation signed a treaty of Point Elliott in 1855, receiving a 13,000-acre reservation within Whatcom County, located 5 miles west of Bellingham, Washington. Next. Our demographics, our land base is 13,000 square acres, checkerboarded. Tribal enrollment is approximately 5,000. We have a native population of about 50% natives with a combination of non-natives on our reservation. Low-income households are 50%. We got a housing stock units. We have managed 332 units. Our economy is mainly fishing, tourism, and we have a Northwest Indian College on our reservation as well. Next. A little bit of our background. Quanah Village, the upper slide you see there is a Quanah Village Apartments. Consisting of 118 units that we built on our Quanah corridor, 1-, 2-, and 3-bedroom apartments. Small apartments located near the Northwest Indian College and other tribal services and transportation. This is where we started doing our wraparound with our families before the Chelangen Village was built. We also built a gymnasium, which is the lower picture that's up in a different development of our McKenzie area, and that money we used for that was ICDBG. It was funded as a model activity from HUD. Next. Challenges. We've had challenges moving forward. Title VI loan payment takes away from our IHBG funding that we would normally set aside for future development. So that's one of our challenges by taking out the Title VI. It's been challenging working with families to allow them to set aside their fears so that providers can do wraparound services for them. Example would be a family that has gotten their children removed from Indian child welfare. They look at that agency and our caseworker as the bad person that removed their children. Question our team on why we would allow them on the wraparound team. So just helping them rebuild their trust is one of our challenges with the families. Next. Opportunities. The land was donated by the tribe. It's within walking distance for tribal services like the administration office, the Notlemy Tribal Health Center, Northwest Indian College, and Fitness Center, just to name a few that are nearby the village. It's on the bus line, which stops right out in front of the gate. Housing was able to get a commitment from the council to provide hard dollars to help pay towards our Title VI loan, which was a big plus on our end. Next. Why transformational? Back in 2013, I was approached by several agencies. If units can be set aside for family reunification or recovery, if they had just had a house, they could get their children back, I was told. I asked the ICW director to work up some policies on how they would manage these homes, and they never followed through with it. I knew we had a development coming up in the future, but never thought about it being a transformational wraparound program. I shared my thoughts with John Plummer, our mental health counselor, and he said, wouldn't it be fun to develop a project and provide an array of wraparound services for housing, educational, social, and health services that will help sustain efforts made towards the transformational change they seek? We can call it transformational, not transitional. For families seeking to make transformational life changes, for some it would be a transition from homelessness to simply having a home. For others, it may be transition from domestic violence to safety, from addiction to sobriety, or the process of reunification of parents with their children. One thing they all have in common is the need for a decent, safe, and healthy home where stability fosters habits that lead to core values of honesty, accountability, and personal responsibility for change. So I decided to start with the council and bring a resolution forward to get their buy-in on the transformational wraparound program. The council was speechless when I shared my idea of such a project. They furthered my resolution when I got in front of them and wanted language within the resolution that directed the general manager to mandate the LABC departments to work with the housing director on a weekly basis. Next. Moving forward, I started hosting the wraparound meetings weekly, which included behavioral health, the Lummi Tribal Clinic, Lummi Courts, Employment Training Center, Indian Child Welfare Office, Lummi Counseling Services, Victims of Crime, and Lummi Probation, just to name a few. The meetings started out large, but 2 months into the meetings, I realized that there were departments that really didn't want to be there. So I took it even further and gathered up my housing team and went in front of the Law and Justice Commission, Health Commission to get their buy-in on our project. Then we went to all the department staff meetings to share our project which sparked a lot more interest from staff, because I realized as a director that sometimes not all directors share with their staff what is going on with other departments. So now I had my core group of individuals that created a wraparound team to move forward. Next. Important. 2015. It's important to meet weekly with the architect and project manager on the design and concept. And one unique thing that we had with our project is that we do force account. So we are the general. So the staff is employed by the Lummi Housing Authority, which made the project work easier when it comes to change orders. So we showed the wraparound group what the design looked like, and they got their feedback. So they were part of this from the very start of the designing of it. Sat down with the tribal attorney, worked with us on a weekly basis to develop the wraparound policies. So you can see that starting earlier really helped us make a difference, so we'd be ready when we opened up the doors. In December of 2014, we met with the tribal attorney to discuss a Title VI loan for the actual construction of the building. Went to tribal council in February of 2015 to further discuss the Title VI loan and had several telephone calls with HUD. We finally closed the loan in June of 2015 and broke ground on the actual construction of the buildings in July of 2015. Next. So here we are, July of 2017. We held our open house for the Chelangen Village. We started holding classes for the families that were referred or sponsored by their agencies back in April and May of 2017. Our mental health counselor does an assessment on the family where he screens for honesty and accountability. Families are required to attend at the minimum of 6 weekly classes for an hour that are held in the evening at the Chelangen Village Residence Center. We programmed the gate to open at 4:45 and close at 5:10 for the families to come to the meeting that aren't living in the village yet. These meetings allow for the families to get to know one another and listen to the elders and share their stories. These Wednesday evening meetings are required for all families to attend, along with attendance requirements for a women's group and a men's group that are held weekly also. Next. The gate establishes boundaries. All residents and guests at 14 years and older are drug tested and run a background check on them. Families have given their trust to say no to individuals that could be their close relatives but aren't clean. We do random UAs on all families every 2 or 3 months that are living here. Next. This is the picture of the pods. So these were designed to build closeness for families to draw off one another and create a bond with each other. The covered area between the pods provides a safe place for the kids to play. We have hung several native art carvings above the pods to signify our culture and a way of life. We have, for example, we have a salmon one, we have a frog, halibut, etc. Next. The units are typically smaller. We provided a washer and dryer to these units that we don't normally provide in our regular rental units. The floors were painted cement. It's not tiled. It's not linoleum, which is low maintenance for our home. We have the radiant heating panels, which are a unique feature that we've used in these units. Next. Elders are the gatekeepers to the village. They see everything and aren't shy to let the families know. Our mental health provider, John Plummer, and his wife live in one of these elder units, which is good for the village. They have to run away at least once a month to recharge their batteries and come back and get energized, because they get a lot of knock on their doors, which is a plus but could be a negative way. So that's why he always says, I need to run away for the weekend and come back in with his batteries all recharged. Next. The Residence Center was built with offices facing the playground to allow the children to play while the parents are doing counseling in the offices. One of these offices are being utilized by John, our counselor, and most recently we have gotten LBC's behavioral health director to allow us to have one of their clinicians deliver services out of the other offices, such as couples counseling, etc., which is a big step from a year ago when we originally built this one. Next. So this is you could look at the slide. These are the offices that face one of the playgrounds, and that's why we built it. We got them all fenced around, and we got lots of security cameras. And so this is one of the smaller playgrounds. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see we have another playground in the back of the project, and this is for a little bit of bigger kids. And they have provides basketball areas, and then that one we showed earlier in the slide was a toddler section. But lots of picnic benches around the playground, because that brings your community by having picnics and have the parents out there watching the kids while they're out there playing. Next. These are walking paths that we built around and in between some of the units. So the kids call these the Hot Wheel racetracks. And so it's just a nice feature to get the kids off the streets that play with their bikes. The elders walk this path back and forth. And so it's just a really nice, unique feature that we were able to put in the Chelangen Village when we built it. Next. The garden. The community garden was a really big event this year. We set aside a piece of the land inside the village, and it was a success with all the families. We were able to partner with the Bellingham Food Bank that provided us seed for the garden, which later grew into a bigger relationship by providing food twice a month to the families in the village. We noticed that most of these families are in need of food towards the end of the month, so that is when the food bank brings out his refrigerated truck and starts holding out boxes of food for the families right after our Wednesday night meeting. And it's been a big hit, and teaching these families about the vegetables and about the community part of having a garden. And it was an adventure and a really nice feature that we were able to do. Next. We decided from the beginning that we wanted the families to take ownership in the village. So we purchased a riding lawnmower, two push mowers, a blower, and a weed eater, and they do the lawn care for the village. It gives the families pride to mow the lawns and puts less burden on our maintenance department. So this is all run by the families, individuals' family. You'll see one will leave a lawnmower laying out, the next person will grab that lawnmower, and it just goes on down the path. And it's just really nice to be able to have built something that they're not waiting for housing to come do their lawns. Next. Transformational, not transitional. Housing is both an incentive for change, provided a base where change is made possible. Residency is open-ended, as long as participating families are fulfilling their contracts. Contracts, rather than a lease, include the home visits to check housekeeping and mental health from the roadmap that residents need to follow to keep their housing. We have a lot of opiate abuse. Out here, and so we have to work really closely with all the care departments, and a lot of them is the ability for them to say no is what's a nice feature on why we had this gated community, because a lot of families can't say no to other family, friends, even their parents and stuff, and so by providing that gated community and this consistency allows us to help move them forward. Next. Sources and uses. The infrastructure, you can see we had some proceeds to sell of $400,000. So those is non-HUD money we used, and ICBG and the HASTA. And so that consisted of the infrastructure that we put in. And you may say, why we use proceeds to sell? Well, because on the upper south corner of the Schlangen, we have another development which is gated separately from the Schlangen Village, and that's for our over-income families that we're building 10 over-income homes on, and we're calling that the Schlangen Estates. And then the construction of the loan, the Title VI loan was $5.8 million, and at the end of our construction, we were actually $400,000 under budget, so we were able to put that back at the end of the note. So the total development for this area was about $7.6 million. Next. Creating a culture of transformational. A community facility is used for weekly meetings with tenants to guide them in accomplishing their sobriety and family goals. An Elders Arts and Crafts Center allows elders to share the culture and knowledge with families through cedar bark weaving, carving, harvesting. We also did some salmon, which was a really unique feature this year that we were able to can. We got somebody to donate us 100 pounds of some sockeye, and so we took our weekend and got our pressure cookers and went and taught these families how to can some salmon. And so that was really creating that culture, is getting together, and we really utilized that resident center up there for lots of different things with these families. It was just nice to see those 6 little moms. And we got the kids putting the lids on the jars, and the families walked away with cases of salmon, and they never had grandparents around to be able to show them how to do that. So that was really nice, getting the elders there and showing them how to do some canned salmon. Next. Current status. Development is currently half full. The Housing Commission has been great with us from the start, knowing that the village was going to take some time to fill up since it was a new program. We didn't intend that this program would be self-sustainable with rental income. That is why we asked the tribe to help us out with our Title VI loan with hard dollars. It's hard when we have to evict families, and we had to ask 3 families to leave since we opened the doors a year ago. This eviction is a collaboration amongst a wraparound group and not solely placed on the housing director. We all come together and talk about the families, so when the family is evicted, they aren't running to another agency for sympathy. It's truly a collaboration effort. We've not had one police call to the village since it opened. That's a huge accomplishment compared to our other housing developments. As an example, Quina Village is just not even a quarter of a mile down the road, where we have 50 calls a month at this area compared to not one single call in 1 year at our Schlangen Village. Next. Lessons learned. We use contracts with a person, not leases. We had developed a separate eviction code from our standard landlord code under the tribe. The process took over 6 months and was started back in 2016 with public hearings and several council meetings. But we now have a separate eviction code called the Transformational Wraparound Eviction Code. This code allows us to make a family leave immediately, and we don't need to go in front of a judge to get them out. That's probably the biggest plus is having that separate code which it took lots of hearings, lots of meetings, but we actually could open up our code now and see transformational wraparound code. And so it's been a unique, because we know as housing directors that it takes a while to get somebody out of your unit. By that time, you know, especially being in the village in a clean and sober environment, they're contaminating that area more. So we had to do some thinking, and so we put the code into place, and so we actually have a code, which is really nice to have. Next. Tips for success. The biggest thing is just your strategic thinking. You know, weekly meetings with the architect was a plus. You know, we sat down every week with the design team, getting these together, laying out things so we could stay away from a lot of change orders. Hire wise. You know, went out and I took my chance and hired a mental health counselor back in 2013, and he's been a big plus to our community. And communication with the tribal councils is key. You know, and we're fortunate to have on our housing commission, one appointed council member is appointed to our housing commission. So there's always contact with housing, with the council, because we are a separate entity. You anticipate the needs of your community. Residents moving toward goals strengthen their new sobriety by creating methods to allow them to say no to family, friends, and partners who are not on the same path to wellness. And create policies in advance. The policies would be tested by the residents, and they also need to remain compliant with tribal law and the HOSTA regulations. So that's sort of what I feel is my tips for success. Next. Takeaways. Housing is the hub to successful wraparound services. Desire to keep housing ability to allow clients the mental and physical space to experience positive change are cited by program staff as important benefit for the program. Partnership outreach is ongoing. Partners can provide a range of supportive services, decrease the number of services that housing could feel compelled to provide. Shared responsibility and consistency is caring. The rules are keeping the rules consistent. The development, the Chelangen is not the first attempt at wraparound services at Lummi. We don't have to start over every time we see them. The responsibility of monitoring, nurturing, and handling down consequences weighs heavily on program staff. It is a form of self-care when the responsibility can be shared among the group. All I want to see is you want to get up every morning and do what you need to do. These are families whose lives have been ruled by chaos, violence, low expectations. They have often not had such experience raising their children and are afraid of making mistakes. Chelangen needs to be a place where they can learn both to succeed and to make mistakes that do not ruin their lives. Next.
Diana, thank you so much. What amazing work you're doing. It's just amazing, and it's wonderful to hear the results that you've had so far and the impact you all have had on the families in your community. And I think what this illustrates really is the tools available, but also how it clearly demonstrates that tribes can do amazing work when they have resources and tools to make it happen, to really serve their community. So I want you to know you should be commended for this. It's amazing and it's exciting to hear. Thank you so much for sharing. It'd be great if we can have, some discussion and get a little bit more into some of the details or things that you've seen in undertaking this project. If you had to do it all over again, would you recommend or use Title VI?
If it was different circumstances and a chance for more positive funding or hard dollars from the tribe, no, I would probably not choose to use Title VI because you have to pay the loan back. But if it was in the same situation and low on funding to build without enough NAHASDA funding, yes, I would do it again because this sort of wraparound program is needed for our families.
Great, thank you. And can you share what was the hardest part of getting buy-in from all of your players?
I think the hardest part was deciding on the players for the team and the method of forcing people to be at the table that didn't want to be there from the get-go. So these individuals just dropped off, and we created the wraparound team we have today, which is a great team. So I didn't see the need, even though I had the resolution. I didn't just see I seen the disgruntled faces. I didn't feel that they really wanted to be at that meeting. So I decided to take it even further and go into the commissions and share what they had, because I think every department has to report to their commissions. And so they were just like coming back telling their director, hey, this is a great program, you know, to hear about in housing. So we went that route, and then we went even further and went and got invited to their staff meetings to all the departments, and went every week and hit a different department and just shared what we were going to do, and just got the staff and the clinicians like, wow, you know, really helped my clients. So that was really the part, is trying to get that, because I think tribes don't know how rich they are, and you just got to open your door and put your gate down, and let departments try to do a wraparound. And I think once they find out it's helping them with their client, it just gets them excited, and it makes them. And so we just provide the hub. Housing is the hub for all the services, and so that's sort of, I guess, is why it's just really getting the players to buy in, and a lot of my energy and time going to each of the departments and asking them and sharing my program with them.
Yeah, that's amazing, and just the holistic approach really shows through in how effective and the success it's been. Also, I thought was really interesting is that you have a behavioral health specialist on staff, and I'd like to hear a little bit more on how this has made a difference in the transformational housing approach.
It was the greatest thing I ever did. It was a chance I took when I brought John on back in 2013 part-time to work with our families that were put on a contract before this wraparound was even in place, behavior issues that were on the verge of losing their housing. It never dawned on me that our families face so much childhood trauma, and by having someone they can talk to help them create structure and stability in their home. So we weren't here to evict them because they kept having parties, and so we would put them on a contract and make them go see John. And just that part of it, he would come back and say, wow, there's just a lot of trauma. You know, we need to go this way, you need to go that way, because of what they shared with him. And so it was just a unique experience for these families and mom to help settle them down so they can raise their kids and focus on their kids and not so much on the chaos that was going on. And so it's been the greatest thing I have is bringing him on staff. And so I could just say not every housing authority is going to be able to afford to bring on somebody like that, but you know, he worked with behavioral health before as a clinician, and when he came, he didn't realize, on being on this side, he didn't realize until he sat and told me that, you know, I never thought about housing when I was doing my practice. I didn't know when my client would leave that they would probably go and couch surfing and coming back, because I didn't think about that. But if we all start thinking about that housing really has to give the family the stability. And so I've learned this from sharing this with John Plummer. So my hat's off for what he does here for our families, and he's doing a great job.
Yeah, what amazing work, and I like the focus of housing as the hub. I think that's very, very poignant and very important to stability, and like you said, being able as parents to focus on children and family versus all the chaos going on around.
Right.
You know, I think another important aspect that you talked about was elders and the participation of elders in the community, and elders seen as that support or that constant force or security within the community as well. Can you talk a little bit more about that? And in addition to the canning that you talked about with the salmon, what other things that you see elders participating in, how you selected those to participate and live in the community?
Well, the elders were selected by what they could provide to the families in the village. We had a few elder meetings from the get-go, invited a few, got a feel for them, whether they would be a good fit for the village. And then the takeaways, you know, the elders get to provide daily guidance for the residents. They get to hear the family stories and struggles every week. They become the Chelangen Village grandparents to these families within the community, which these families respect. Each elder is viewed as an embodiment of the stories they have integrated and lived out through their lives. The core values of these elders are to reflect the stories passed down from previous generations, those of generosity, honesty, hard work, kindness, forgiveness, and love. And at the neighborhood level, elders will have their disposal professional providers who support the work of the residents, you know. And it was just a good experience, you know, in August to be able to get that salmon and get 2 or 3 of the elders come over that morning and sit down and sit there and say, just shove the fish in there, and then just, you know, just watching those families, you know, there's this young mom of 25 and it's just like, am I doing it right? You just got to stick it in there, dearie, you know, and it's just that collaboration of having these elders here, and they don't miss a meeting. We don't require them to come to our Wednesday meetings, but they never miss one. They love it, and they applaud these families every Wednesday when they get somebody that stands up and says, I have 365 days sobriety today. And so they all walk over and they give them a hug, and just that feeling of that, you know, where I got my children back. They've been gone for 5 years, and I finally got my children back. And here they are, you know, Teddy and Avina, here they are. Then, you know, he's a real proud father of his 2 kids. You know, we all give them encouragement. So that's really what this meeting does. Is it builds that relationship so everybody can rely on everybody. You know, it's just kind of cool watching that development. So the elders are where people are going to go. They feel the safest, so they're going to go knock on the door and say, hey, you got any jumper cables? Well, no, I don't, but I think someone told you, because they're the wisdom of all of our tribes. You know, we always look at the elders as the wisdom, and so it's really cool to see the children knock on their door and say, hey, you got any chips? You got any fruit? You know, and so they're like, oh, let me see what I got in my fridge, and so they have those are that's their stories too, because they love kids, and so it's a breathtaking thing having to build a community with the elders. I couldn't see not doing it without elders.
Yeah, and I think what you touched on too is just the elders there to reassure the young parents, right? You're doing this okay. You're doing all right. Your kids are going to be okay. We're going to be a community. We're going to help you through all this. I mean, that you can't even put a price on that and that contribution. And speaking of the children, how are children being supported in this community? You discussed, you know, the parents going to meetings or services and being able to watch kids on the playgrounds, which is a fantastic idea and fantastic design. But how are children specifically being supported in addition to those, you know, design considerations?
The village was built for the children. It supports their parents who create the structure and warmth needed to produce a healthy children. It also provides ongoing training to parents regarding the relationship to themselves, their partner, and their children. The elders have also cultivated a relationship with each of the children. There is a clothing bank that helps parents provide clothing for growing children. So one has a baby, outgrows his clothes, they go to the elder has a clothing bank, and new moms that come into the village that come in and they're grabbing clothes left and right. And so the Wednesday evening meetings provide a daycare for all the children, and their monthly community dinner provides an intergenerational activity. So once a month we get together, and on those Wednesdays we celebrate all the birthdays. So everybody has their birthday written on the board, all their kids' birthdays, and we have a cake and have pizza. And that's just a big thing for all the kids to get together. And that little daycare we have on Wednesday nights where one of the moms steps up and says, hey, I'll watch the kids tonight so we can actually hear ourselves talk, because we can't have all 40 kids in one room because we don't even hear ourselves talk. So we tried it for 2 meetings in a row, and we're like, we got to do something, you know. And so, so it's the village. It was really built for the children.
That sounds amazing and wonderful, and what a great approach. So where do successful residents go after living at Chelangen Village?
Well, the key part of the Chelangen is that they come in not on a waiting list, because they're sponsored by an agency. And so, but one of the requirements is that they have to be able to be qualified to be on the waiting list. So we get them on the waiting list, and they could be a year out or 6 months out to come up for a unit to go into. Until then, they'll sit here on a transfer waiting list. And we had a family do that. They came up on the waiting list 6 months into this project. They were in Chelangen. And they moved into a 5-bedroom unit. Well, they came to me and said, hey, I got this letter. I'm up on the waiting list, and I don't know what to do. And I says, well, how do you feel? How do you feel being outside the gate? How do you feel you're going to do it? Because this young mom and her partner, she got her kids back, 3 kids back, and he got his 2 kids back, and they made one family together with 5 kids. And she goes, I think I'm ready for it. And I says, well, I think you are too. I said, you've grown a lot here, and we'll be there. We know where you're going to be at. You're going to be in one of our other housing areas, and we'll go and visit you there. And so they graduated and transferred into another unit in another housing areas because they worked their way up on the waiting list. But we have 5 or 6 families living there that they have come up on the waiting list, but they chose not to move out. They want to stay there for a little while longer because they're not ready yet. So they'll sit there on the transfer waiting list, so they won't lose their spot. They'll just sit there idling. So once in a while we have a vacancy come up, I'll go to them and say, hey, you want to take it or you want to wait? I need to wait. But we won't remove them. They sit there. And so that's why it was important to have them be able to be qualified as a Lummi tribal member with a Lummi child to be able to be transferred into something. That was the key. The key to this is those two features and being on our regular waiting list, because at some point we want to keep rotating these families. People ask, have you ever put a time frame? I said there's no time frame. We have no time frame on this transformational. It really depends on when they've worked the program, just like this mom and her partner last year, and transferred into a 5-bedroom unit and are doing just great up in there. And just hate to see them go, but they did good. They're doing good. And so, but yeah, that's just, they got to work the program.
And that's wonderful to hear. I mean, I think what's coming through loud and clear is the real life impacts, right, on community,
right,
family, children, elders, and it's just amazing. I am done, asking some of my probing questions, but Diana, is there anything you wanted else to share that we didn't cover, that I didn't cover in questions before we open it up to the callers to ask questions?
No, I can't think of anything. I'm open for the questions, and just really want to thank you again for the opportunity to share our transformational wraparound program, the Chelangen Village.
Thank you. So I think we're ready for questions.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, as we move to Q&A, please feel free to place yourself into the question queue by pressing #2 on your telephone keypad. You will hear a notification when your line is unmuted. At that time, please state your name and question. To send a written question, select all panelists on the Send To drop-down menu of the chat panel located on the lower right-hand side of your screen. And I believe we've had a couple of written questions come in here, so I will go to the first. What funding sources are being used to pay for the ongoing services? How much NAHASDA?
Can you repeat that question again?
Yes. What funding sources are being used to pay for the ongoing services? How much NAHASDA?
Oh, how much NAHASDA?
NAHASDA, yes.
I believe that.
So right now, you mean the fund, is it the staff? Are you talking about the mental health counselor?
And we can wait for a clarification on that if you'd like. And we do have another written question here. How do you engage staff when directors are disinterested?
How do you engage staff when? So how I engage the staff to participate in the wraparound is that it just took lots of going to them. I think my key part was I went actually into the commissions. I went into the housing commissions, and then they heard about it and they got excited, so they went back and directed back to their staff, why aren't you doing this or participating with housing? And so it kind of pushed that little button to get them more engaged, and now it's like everybody shows up for 1 hour on a Thursday and we case manage these families, and it's fun having the people there because they're seeing their client get outcomes. They're seeing outcomes for their client, and I think that's what's making it a success.
Okay. I do believe we have a clarification on the last question. Is the mental health counselor being funded from the HASDA entirely?
Yes.
Okay. And we do have a couple of verbal questions that have come in as well. I'll go ahead and go to the first of those. Caller, your line is unmuted.
Hello, yeah, this is Marcus Luke. I'm with the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation here in Pendleton, Oregon. I have two questions, if I could. How many units are there total, and how many staff do you have on site?
We have 45 units that make up the Chelangen Village, if you're referring to the Chelangen Village. And I have two staff members that run that program, a mental health counselor that just doesn't run Chelangen. He runs all of our other housing areas, and we have one transformational housing coordinator that runs that program.
Thank you.
Okay, and we'll go ahead and move to the next caller. We do have another verbal question here. Caller, your line is unmuted.
Hi, Janet Wren from the Lower Iowa Housing Authority. I wondered, do your elders get to live there for free since they're such a big part of the program?
No, everybody is still at the 30% rural, and most of the elders that are living there, their rent varies, but it's basically by their Social Security. But no, they're not there rent-free.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, and we have a couple of additional written questions here. Thank you for your presentation. Would you be willing to share the ordinances that you use to implement the transformational housing program?
Yes.
All right. And the next question here, what happens if someone in the family fails a drug test?
If a family fails a drug test, if they're in the village and this has happened and they failed the UA, we bring them in and we ask them what happened. And if they tell us and take responsibility, we will work with them. But in one case, we had both individuals, just like, I don't know, I'm not really sure why that's like that. And so they weren't being honest with us, and so we had to ask them to leave. But if it has to do with meth, it's a no tolerance if there was meth in their system. But if there was opiates and stuff like that, we try to work with them as a second chance, but they have to be honest and tell us the true story on why that drug test came up positive. But if they test positive when we're getting ready to move them in, they have to wait for 90 days and come back in 90 days and pass the UA before they go in there.
Okay, our next question is, do you have single people receiving services, and how do you handle their housing needs?
Yes, we have set aside 2 homes in the village. One is for single men and one is for single women. At the current time, we're getting ready to put one single woman into one of the rooms in the women's home, but it hasn't happened yet. But it should be happening here in the next 3 weeks. And we were able to get some resources to furnish that place and set up different contracts based not on family but based on single individuals. And we set up some rules within the new contract that talks about getting along, because you're going to be putting 3 different individuals that may not be related to each other into the single home. And so we had to do a lot of resources, and we tweaked a different contract for those single people. But we have started looking at addressing single people that want this program and may not have children by setting aside two different units, 2 3-bedroom units in the Chelenga village.
Okay, our next question is Janet Heron from Lower Elwha Housing. Do the elders get to live there for free? I believe, have we answered that one?
I think so. Yeah, she was on the phone.
The next question. You are providing wraparound services on site rather than having the participants go to an office or clinic for support. Has this changed the way that the tribe is delivering supportive services in other areas of the reservation?
No. They're just now starting to come to the village. Like I mentioned in my presentation, we finally got the behavioral health department underneath the tribe to send a clinician over, and they finally recognized that our village, they always look at the billing mechanisms, the billing for services. That office has 4 walls, and so they're going to test it, and they have been coming over for the last month, which is a very big step because we weren't getting them to come. We just had our regular counselor, and so it was really unique that they were able to go over and knock on their door and let them know I'll be over in the office, and the family came over, and the kids went out and played in the playground. I had gotten an email from behavioral health director saying, great, it's work. It looks like it's working, Diane. My hands are up, and let's keep the partnership going. So that was a really big step to see that happen.
Okay, the next question is, what is the breakdown of units, family versus units for individuals?
So there's 45 units altogether, and we have 9 of them are 2-bedroom. We designate those for the elders, and then we got 24. They're 2-story pods. We call them. They're 3 bedrooms, and then we got 12 separate units, buildings that are consisting of 3- and 4-bedroom units, triplexes for bigger families. And so, we got the small 650 square feet, 2 bedrooms. Then we got the 1,000 square feet, 3-bedroom units. Then the 3- and 4-bedroom triplexes are around 1,200 to 1,300 square feet for the larger families.
Okay, and can you talk about the security system, the gate entry system, the on-site cameras? How do you all use the security systems and monitor comings and goings, or to monitor comings and goings? Was it expensive, and is it worth the expense?
We weren't even considering this a gated community, but as we started working the wraparound program and we were doing the wraparound here at DeQuina Village, it was an eye opener that we needed to have a gate. And so because, these guys weren't holding boundaries, let alone here at Quanah Village, how are we going to get them? And if they were in there telling us that they don't know how to tell mom because she's not clean, that my mom can't come over, my dad. And so we started thinking, before we opened the doors, that we need to do a gate. So I talked to my project manager and said, we need a gate around here. So we brought couple gate companies out. We looked at which would work. And so the one that we liked the most, I'd have to I'll get you the cost. You can email me and I can get the exact cost. But the one that we have with the keypad is it tracks, you get a code, we track your code. So we know if you went out at 2 o'clock in the morning. And we could change the code from my computer at my office. I can change the code like within 30 seconds and the code stops to give you another code. And they could buy a clicker, purchase a clicker from us. It's a thing that can sit on the dash of your car or above your visor, and it opens up the gate for when it's raining. You don't want to push in your 4-digit code. But it's just I would do it in a heartbeat. It was worth the money. The gate is the cameras. I can watch the cameras from my office here. We can go back, and it's got footage as long as it holds it for like a week. So if somebody says, hey, I think somebody took something out of my car last night, could you look? So we'll go back here on the cameras and look at it, and I'll ask my security to sit down and look at it, and they'll put them on a little flash drive for me. I bring it up, and, so we're able to see that footage, and just having that visibility of them makes them more safe that there's cameras. And the cameras are really focused front entrance with the license plates, with the infrared, so we can actually see different people trying to get in that aren't supposed to get in. And so it's really, right now, it's nice to have a gate, but what I'm learning now, since we've been open for a year, the families are actually doing more of the policing than we are, because they're calling us right away when they said, hey, a car followed me in, and I don't think they're supposed to be here. Well, we would jump in our car right down the road and go down there and follow that car and say, hey, you got to get out of here. You're not supposed to be here. So that's been a big plus, is just them starting to take on the ownership of policing it themselves.
Okay. How do you address needs of independent minors?
Independent minors. We haven't took on that step of independent minors. They have to, people coming in have to be 18 years and older. And we haven't had, and I know we're going to probably have it, but we haven't had any young kids, show any signs of, bad UAs or anything, because people wonder why we went so low on the UAs, 14 years old. Because you want to get them when they're young. You want to get them young and not let them go because of such peer pressure. And so that's why we really hit it at 14. Our regular policies are 16 and older for drug tests, but the 14 and younger, I'm older on the Chelangen Village. And so I don't know if I answered your question all the way, but we don't have minors that live here if they're not living here with a parent.
Okay, and the next question, can you talk about what is discussed at community meetings and who participates and how often?
So we host this meetings every Wednesday from 5 to 6, 1 hour only. Myself shows up, mental health shows up, and our wraparound coordinator shows up. And we have a topic. He provides a topic and gets people involved. And one of these topics could be about it could be about how you parent your child, you know, and once a month we'll ask them, you know, what do you guys want to talk about? And they're like, we want to talk about the playgrounds and parents being out here watching their kids. You know, we want to talk about, these guys bringing their garbage cans back to as simple as bringing their garbage back to their houses, not leaving them out in the streets for 3 or 4 days. And so it's really just an area. We always try to come up with a topic that gets them involved, and we put them into groups. We put them into couples. We always say, hey, go with them, get in a couple, and they just start asking each other these questions that are on this handout. So it's really about establishing that relationship and seeing all those guys get together. You know, I always say, this is my, people like, you have staff. Why do you go to these? I go, because it's my energy. I mean, I feed off these families on Wednesday nights. It may sound crazy, but it just gives me because their stories and that 1 hour in that room just really lights them up. And so, you know, if they have to be there, I feel I need to be there to help support them. And so, the elders take a big part and pride of that 1 hour meeting we ask them to participate, because it's really about creating that relationships and that community. And it's really about why we have these meetings. It's really about that get-together we have for 1 hour.
Okay, and the next question, if you had additional funds, like a wish or dream list, what additional services or program buildings would you have liked to include? Future expansion?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is going to grow. I mean, you know, we're 30. We got 30 units full out of 45, and we're already a year into it. You know, but I think we're going to outgrow it fast because we're getting a lot more people coming forward that need this need. And you know, my next wish could be probably another development. You know, somewhere where I'm not quite sure where it would go at. Somewhere where it would be convenient. The bus line, everything that's in walking distance. You know, and so if we did build those 10 homes towards the back, the over-income homes, which is the Chevelangan estate, that would be a great expansion to go off of. And so this is going to have to go in some other different area if we end up doing this type of development again. But I could see us outgrowing this development really soon, you know. But just, I mean, you know, I think my dream is being for Field Hill right now by having this wraparound and seeing the success of these families, you know. And the mental health, having that mental health counselor just handy, you know, is a big plus, you know. And so I don't know. I mean, this is my, you know, I'm just working the program right now and just seeing the results. So I can't really see anywhere past this right now because, you know, this is really something we're building on right now is this wraparound program.
All right. Can you talk more about the required referrals from other departments and how that works?
So that's how, like, there's no waiting list. So if somebody walks in the door and says, hey, I want to go into Chevelangan, and we'll look at them and say, well, are you in chemical dependency, or are your children in your presence, or what's your situation? And they're like, well, yeah, I'm going to care. I'm going to chemical dependency. Then we'll send them back over there and say, you need to have your counselor bring your name forward at our next meeting we have on Thursday, because we get one of their clinicians comes to our Thursday meeting from chemical dependency. So the following week they'll come over and say, hey, I had so-and-so, he wants me to sponsor him, I think he'll be a good candidate. So we make them try to screen out as best they can to see if they're going to be a fit for the program. So I have a little cheat sheet that each of those departments have that ask questions to make sure they qualify. You know, are they a tribal member? You know, if they have children, are they enrolled children? You know, are they clean and sober? And they have that question, so they kind of screen them off the bat. And then their clinician brings that wraparound meeting. They bring that name. And so then we say, okay, let's send them to my coordinator. So then they come to see the coordinator. The coordinator sits down with them, fills their wraparound application out, gets them on the waiting list. Gives John a call and gives the number to John. John calls him up and says, come on in for the assessment. So he sits down and does an hour, 2-hour assessment with him, you know, and comes back and says, I think they'll be a great fit for the village. You know, let's work with them. I invited them to our Wednesday night meeting, and we just start the process right there. And within 4 or 5 weeks, they're in a unit.
Okay, our next question. Forgive me if you've answered this. Is it strictly sober living, or is it a housing first strategy? Marijuana, alcohol? Thanks.
It's clean and sober, no marijuana and no alcohol. It's a clean and sober community.
Okay, what is the reaction from neighboring housing developments? Are they supportive or worry about safety and other issues?
Right now there's no other housing development where it sits at down the road. There's one tribal member over the fence on his own private property. He's fine with it because he got the gate, he got his fenced area because it faces the back of his yard. But at first, I got feedback, well, yeah, that housing in a gated community, only so many people can go in there. And so I heard the rumble, from Facebook or from staff, and I just kind of went, but the cool thing about it is, a couple of weeks ago, my staff member, because, they're real Facebook people, they come in and said, Diane, they're talking about housing on Facebook. I said, oh, really? What are they saying? They're like, well, it's just weird. I mean, they're all positive. I go, well, who's going off on us? Well, somebody was mad because you wanted their 17-year-old to come visit her brother that lives there, and the mom's really mad and stuff. And she goes, but there was 20 people that came back and said, oh, you're talking about Chelangham. Yep, that's a gated community. It's clean and sober. You don't like the rules, don't go there. And so it was just a good feeling of, it took a year to be able to get people to understand that they know what that is. And the families that live there, there's one elder that lived there, his siblings that lived somewhere else on the reservation said, brother, that's probably the safest place you're at behind that gate on the reservation. I'm glad you moved into the Chelangham, because he's been away from the reservation and moved up from Seattle and went and looked at it and said, hey, yeah, I'll become one of your elders. I'll move here. And then right away people are like, you're going there? That's a gated community. There's a lot of bad people that have drugs and all that. And he comes to our meetings and shared that story and said, I applaud you guys. You aren't what everybody else is saying on the outside. But now, as of today, people are talking positive that you have a gated community. And they know when people say gate, they know what they're talking about. They're talking about the Chelangham. It's a gated community. And the families love it. They love the gated community that live there.
Right. How has your behavioral health specialist built trust with the residents?
You gotta kind of know John and his background. I mean, he's a mental health psychiatrist, and he's worked around the tribe he's been working for the tribe for the past 15 years, 12 years. He's got a DV background, worked with domestic violence down in Seattle. But his first 20, 25 years of his life, he was a pastor. And so he decided that he wanted to go out and get his degree. So he went back and furthered his education, because his first degree was, it was a bachelor's of science, and so he decided he wanted to walk away from the parish, and walk away, and went to school and got his PhD. And I think it's that part of him being a pastor, he sits and he's just real quiet. I mean, it's like, he's got a really quiet voice. I can't believe he's even a pastor because you can't even hear him hardly talk. But it's just, I guess, that sense of warmth. I mean, because the first time I met him, I was just like, man, and so it's just, I think it's just that relationship. He has that, if you just have to meet him and know who he is, that he can walk away from and know that, wow, they feel good to be able to share their deepest secrets and know that they're kept there with him, and he shares a lot of that back to him. He gets them, and I think that's what families really take to him, because when they first say, I'm going to contract, I don't want to go see this guy, but after then, even though they could be off contract, they're still going to see him, and that's okay. What it's there for, they need somebody to talk to. He cares. When one of a family members passes away, and he knows that they're on a contract, he'll go on a Saturday, he'll go knock on the door and say, how's you guys doing? I'm sorry about your dad passing away. So he has that ability to do that, and I think that's what families enjoy about having recognize our counselor to open up to him.
Okay. Can you talk about 6 weeks of meetings future residents have to go through to get on the list? What is covered in those meetings? Do folks participate in all 6 meetings?
Yeah, so these are the meetings. We just tell them to come over on a Wednesday night. You got to participate in those Wednesday night meetings. And if you, for some reason, you have to work, you can't make those meetings, try to make the Thursday. If one of them has, if one of the families is a male, try to hit John's men's groups that he has on Thursday nights. And so some of the stuff that John covers on his men's groups would be how to treat your partner. You know, how to, you know, it's Valentine's Day. You know, how are you going to treat your partner or take her out to dinner and stuff like that. You know, and just so those are more relationships he does at men's group. And we have a women's group. If somebody says, "Why work at the casino and I can't make that Wednesday, but I'm off on Tuesday," well, on Tuesdays from 10 to 11 we have, which is ran by our coordinator, and the elder women come over and they just sit there and talk about all kinds of topics on how to support each other. We listen to the moms, their sad story, you know, that they might have lost their parent, and they listen to them. So we just try to mix up all kinds of stuff within the meetings that they have, you know, and like I said, once a month, it may just be a birthday month, and we just ask anybody for announcements, and then we just go right into the cake and pizza, and they still get credit for that meeting. But I think why we create it this way is because we know they want to get in, and we also give them the ability to find out who their neighbor is that they're going to live next to and create that community amongst each other. You know, so that's really was why we have created these meetings for them to attend to.
Okay. Is the Northwest Indian College assisting in the providing educational services at the village or in other housing on reservation? How has the college been a partner in assisting the housing authority?
Well, for one thing, where the Quine Apartments are at, not necessarily the Schlangen Village, but where the Quine Apartments was, this land was donated by the Northwest Indian College. So we have 118 apartments on this piece of property, and it's just within walking distance from the college. And so our partnership that we have with the Northwest Indian College is that we set aside 20 of these units for the Northwest Indian College to rent out to their families with small children. And so that's a partnership we've created as a collaboration with the college. But as of Schlangen, there's no really ties with it, except that there's some families that actually go to the college and go to school, but no really partnership in that sense of those units.
Is the Northwest Indian College, I believe I've read that one. Can you talk about the contract and what's in the contract?
Yeah, the contract, it's a 4 or 5 page contract, and it pretty much just talks about, you know, talks about the house requirements, you know, talks about the requirements that your participation in, talks about visitors. It's got a section on visitors. They all have to be, you have to be background and drug tested. There's a section that talks about no weapons are allowed in here. You know, it talks about an individual service plan. You know, what you plan to lay your schedule out for. What are your goals? Because when people come in here, we just don't want to just sit home and do nothing. You know, they got to be doing something. They're going to some school or doing something. There's a section in here that talks about the length of stay, termination. So it's just like it's similar to a lease, but we've turned it into a contract. You know, because the HUD talks about leases, and we wanted to stay away from the leases, so because that ties us to your eviction code, so that's why we had to come up with a different eviction code. And so we decided our attorney advised us to stick with a contract, because that contract can be broken more than leases. You get more technical when you come with leases, so we've created a contract, you know, and it's been working for us so far.
Okay, and while we're letting some additional questions come in here, once again, as a reminder, you can press #2 on your telephone keypad if you have a verbal question, or you can select all panelists on the Send To drop-down menu of the WebEx chat panel in order to ask a written question. Okay, and the next question that we have here, do you have families with troubled youth, such as drug offenders, school dropouts, etc.? What happens if they become runaways?
Well, yeah, we did have one family that went in there and had 2 teenagers, you know, 15 and 17, and they failed the UA for marijuana. Well, that was jeopardizing the family's house. So they went to treatment, and one of them dropped out of the treatment, didn't fulfill it. So, well, the bottom line is right now is we do have it at the village, but those two individuals are actually staying with aunties because they can't come back to the village because they can't pass a UA. And it's kind of sad because, you know, they're separated from their parents, but they chose that path, and we have to stick to our guns on what we're doing here. And so, you know, maybe they'll wake up and decide they want to be clean, but we definitely do not want that and become toxic with all the other teenagers that are in the village. And we haven't had a lot of dropouts, you know, but we do have a close relationship with the courts, with the truancy, you know, that gives us a report once in a while. And if we do have the kids that aren't participating in school, you know, we get the parents back engaged and say, hey, part of living here, you have to follow the rules, you need to get the kids to school, you know, and help them step up, you know, but haven't really dealt with any runaways, haven't experienced that yet, but I'm sure it's probably something in the future.
Okay, and we do have a verbal question here on the phone. I'll go ahead and open that up. Caller, your line is unmuted.
Was there any pre-development funding from the state?
No.
Okay, if that's the end to the question, I do believe that we've had an additional written question come in here. So just a moment. Have any of the tribal departments offering support services experienced an increase in demand from the village that they can't fund or handle? Meaning, do any departments see this village as a negative for them?
No, not that I'm aware of that we have on our Thursday meetings. You know, there may be some that feel that we may be too strict on not allowing some families to go in there because maybe they aren't tribal, but yet some of their services, they deal with a lot of their departments. They deal with all natives, and they just don't know why. So we've had some of that disgruntled that, you know, I don't know why you guys don't let so-and-so live. You know, they still have their descendant, but they're not enrolled. But, you know, we lay the fine-tooth line that we would never be able to move them anywhere because they never worked their waiting list. And so, you know, we have that type of feedback, but no, nothing that this village hasn't done. If anything, it's actually helped them out. It's helped moms, it's helped families get their children back, you know, because we can put them in here and be reassured that they're going to get their kids back in 3 to 6 months, and we'll allow them to go into this 3-bedroom unit. And under one condition that they're going to work their program. So if anything, we work with this family to say, okay, you need to get that parenting class done, you need to get this done because we need to get those kids in your home. So that was a win-win from us, if anything, that we have put more pressure on them because they could lose their housing if they don't do steps 1 to 2 and 3 to get their kids back. And so I think it's really been more of a plus to them than a negative.
Okay, and once again, we're waiting for any additional questions that might come in. You can press #2 on your telephone keypad if you have a verbal question, or of course select all panelists on the Send to drop-down menu of the WebEx chat in order to ask a written question. Okay, and we do have a couple of verbal questions that have come in. I'll go to the first. Caller, your line is unmuted.
Hello, this is Marcus Luke again with the Umatilla Tribes. Have your other tribal departments stepped up to help you with your staff, along with the services you provide, like education, tribal court, your social services, juvenile system, etc.?
I see that the departments, that I see what they have done and they stepped up, especially Employment Training Center has been a big partner because when we have a family that's on TANF going through, they're always the first one to say, hey, you know, get the letter out to them, get them down to my office, we'll pay their first month's rent, we'll get the deposit going. Do the kids have beds? We can provide bunk beds. So it's really been more of a partnership that way. And we've even had some programs say, hey, can I use your resident center to do a parenting class over there? And can you let these guys know they're all welcome to come to it? You know, and so we've opened up one of the buildings over there to allow them to do that and had the families go over there so they had kids had a place to play. And so it's more been a partnership, I mean, and than anything else. That we're all ganging on this by allowing us to, you know, let people be part of the village.
Okay, and with that, we'll move to the next caller. Caller, your line is unmuted.
Yes, this is Tom Childs with Cowlitz Indian Tribal Housing. Was wondering if we can get a recording of this presentation.
Great. This is Heidi. Tom, we will be posting this on our Code Talk Code Talk website, and that address is on page 34 of the presentation. We will also be posting a recording of the webinar and a case study for folks interested.
Thank you, Heidi.
I'd also like to know about background checks for residents.
Okay, your line is still open.
Yes, this is.
We'd also like to know about background checks. When you background your people going into Schlangen Village, Diana, what things eliminate them? What makes them not be able to be a candidate? They're probably going to have some drugs and that type of thing in their background, but you screen out, I would suppose, for sexual deviancy and assaults and things like that, or what's going to eliminate them?
So we do background checks and screening, and so no sex offenders. If they're a registered sex offender, they're not allowed at all. And if they've done some sort of first-degree violent with a gun or something violent, we don't allow them to go into the village. But we do work with a lot of them that have certain degrees and felonies with drugs and all that kind of stuff. They still have to come in front of me, though, so they'll still get unsuitable, but they sit down with me, and I determine by listening to them what they've changed in their life to be able to allow them to go into the village. And then I went from John's assessment, we sit down together and say, yeah, I think this is good for them to get into here, but we do it as a collaboration together. So, but there are some that do get screened out, but they're more the violent ones, and then the sex offenders for sure.
Okay, thank you, Diana.
Yep.
Okay, we'll move to the next caller. Caller, your line is unmuted.
Hello. Hello?
Hello? Hello?
Oh, yeah, hi. You mentioned earlier that you hire wise is what you said. And so aside from that mental health professional that you brought on, you also said to be careful on what type of architect you choose. And I was wondering, what was your criteria in choosing whoever the architect was you worked with?
Well, we went with a local architect just because we knew we wanted to be able to sit with him on a weekly basis and go over him. And so we wanted to have that flexibility and have that sense of that with the architect when we sat with him and kind of got his idea of what we wanted to build and had him come back and do us a little sketch. And so, when I said, choose wisely, it's really about them having the flexibility. So we didn't really get charged every time he came up because I told him I want to sit for a half hour a week just because I want to make sure we're going in the right direction before we actually got the plans. And so, working that out with him so we don't get a big hourly bill every time he came out to deliver that was a good plus that we got right from the get-go. I was able to explain that to him. We even had the engineer at the table, but then the engineer started charging after a while, so I said, okay, you need to go away. We can't afford you to have you come, but so we would bring him back quarterly and not so much weekly, because, he came for the first 2 or 3 months, and then I started seeing a bill, and I said, nah, we can't have you come, because this is really just a quick 20-minute just for us to sit down with the project manager and make sure we're going in the right direction. So when I said, just hire wisely, it's really about, you get that gut feeling if they're gonna work out. Just like when I hired my project manager, I just had that feeling that he was out there for the best interest for housing, and he knew to watch for corners, and he knew how to, things that, could save us money, and just having that sense of that development is when I went out and found the team that I.
Well, thank you.
And we did have a couple of other written questions come through as well. Is it an issue with your funding that you have vacant units?
No, I worried about that at first, because, when we first opened up, we had, I think the first 3 months we had about 10 people in there, and I thought we were going to start getting pressure. You got all these units empty, you got to get them more in, because I knew it was going to be baby steps. But, just having that communication with your commission and explaining, this is the program, this is what we're doing, and, they get it. They know this is a unique program, that's not going to have the demand when you see a vacant unit. And so now a year into it, I'm feeling a little more comfortable, because I was able to do that over the course of the year. I knew every quarter I needed to bring this up to the commission to keep them in the loop, because community would start talking, they got all these empty units and I need a house. And so it hasn't been that pressure, because I think people know what they know stigma of that is. It's transformational wraparound. So they get it. And so it hasn't been as much pressure on than if we have units vacant in another housing area.
Our next question is, how many people were on your waiting list at the time of development? How did you determine the need of how many houses to build?
There wasn't anybody. It wasn't driven by a waiting list. It was just driven by a lot of the departments coming to me saying, if we had a bunch of homes set aside, they can get their kids back. If I had to clean this over house, blah blah blah. And so from that, we knew that when we built this, we knew, okay, we needed the elders, so we needed to do a handful of elder units, and we had a chance to do these pods. And then, what if we get bigger families? So we need to build a cluster of 3- and 4-bedroom triplexes. And so it was just really a collaboration of effort that we just came up with a number and said, let's try 45. See if that works within our budget. Most of our other projects we build, are except for the apartments here at Huayna, we build them in clusters of 20, 24, or whatever. I needed a variety of a mix, and from small to middle size, and so. But there is no waiting list. There is no waiting list as of today. I mean, it's just that every week we'll get a name to come forward, and we'll screen that person. And we got another family going in on Friday, and the last families that went into the village were 2 Fridays ago. And so they're baby steps. We could move one family in one month, or move 2 families in 1 month. So it's just slow. It's a slow process because they got to do the classes, But there was really no. It was really no based on what numbers I needed. It was just based on I knew there was a need, and we just came up with a number of 45.
Okay, we did have another verbal question come through. I'll open that line. Caller, your line is unmuted.
Diana, you mentioned you have 3- and 4-bedroom units that are 12 to 1,300 square feet, and 2-bedroom units that are 1,000 square feet. But I didn't catch what the units are. You said something about some 600 square foot units?
Yeah, those are the elder units. They're 2-bedroom. Those are 2-bedroom duplexes for the elders that are up at the front of the Chilean, and then the pods are about 1,000 square feet. They're 3 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms upstairs and 1 bedroom downstairs, bath and a half.
Okay, so the 3 bedrooms have 1,000 square feet, and the 4 bedrooms have 12 to 1,300.
Right, yeah, they're quite a bit bigger than the pods. And so right now we have 2 families transferring from the pods into the bigger units because they're having babies. So we got to come up with some new rules. These guys can't get any bigger, but or they got one of their siblings. They got their one of their siblings or relatives. They're bringing in some kids that are living with them, and their house size is grown, so they're growing out of that 3-bedroom, and they're going to get to go into a 4-bedroom, and so. But we purposely created them small to not get these families comfortable, because we're used to building homes and houses that are 1,300, 1,400 square feet, and people rent them out and they don't want to go nowhere. So that's the whole concept of trying to keep them small, to keep them more crowded, that they will want to get into the next level of home ownership.
Have you found that the 600 square foot elder duplexes are a little small, or is that adequate? Are they complaining at all about being only 600 square feet?
Oh no, they're loving them. It's the perfect size for them. It's got the washer and dryer, which are located in the bathroom, and they got their full handicap bathroom and just enough room. They're loving them. And some of them have couples with elders, but there's two that are just single elders, but they use that other room for their sewing room or something because, we built them in case they needed a caregiver. Some elders can't live alone, but we haven't had that run into that at the village yet, but no, they're loving the size of them, so they're not too small.
Huh. Do you allow any pets?
No. Not even a fish. Not even bed bugs.
Oh, Lordy. And how do you make sure that you don't get bed bugs? Do you provide new mattresses for each family coming in, or?
No, we're just knocking on wood right now because we have him here at the village. So, no, we just really do a lot of teaching, a lot of education because we've had him here at the village. At the Quina Village. We've had them here at these apartments, and we ask them where they get their furniture from, and they got them from a secondhand store, blah, blah, blah. So we're doing that education, but a lot of it because when Employment Training Center knows her family's moving in, she says, hey, they need beds. So she buys the beds in town, so at least be assured that those families that are low income are getting the clean mattresses anyway to go into these places. But, we're on top of it. We know what to look for when it comes to bed bugs, believe me.
What department is it that buys the beds? You say the employment department?
Employment Training Center, which is run through your TANF or your GA, they provide the beds for the families under their program.
Oh, really? Okay. Write that down. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, and we have a few additional written questions. Why did you choose to put home ownership homes on the other side of the village?
Because at the very beginning when we were developing this, we had put in proceeds of sale because we had the council saying, you guys are, we get people upset because they can't afford it under HUD guidelines. So if you have an opportunity, could you look at doing some lots for over-income families? And so when we developed this, we knew we didn't need that whole property around the corner, so we cut it off there at that one point and left those other few acres that came out of another road and put the infrastructure in and used proceeds of sale so that those could be turned into over-income homes. And but it was really kind of driven because the council was like, people, are complaining because well, it's not my problem because don't give us no money besides what HUD gives us, hard dollars, so I can't do anything else more. So if I put the proceeds of sale, he goes, what if we were able to give you guys some money? Would you help build over-income homes? So we were able to get $1.5 million, borrow $1.5 million from the tribe to start building those over-income homes. That we have 7 in there now and 3 more to go. But then all of a sudden I couldn't get the families to go in there and want to do 184s, and I was like, why not? And they're like, well, we're next to your village. We don't want to follow those same rules. And so what we did is we ended up separating those two pieces so they actually have their own entrance with a gate, and they can't come. So the only thing that those home ownership homes will not be able to use, they won't be able to use the amenities that are in the village. The kids will not be able to get into the village to play with the playgrounds. But they were fine with that because they didn't want to follow the same Chelangen Village rules and be connected. It was probably one of the best decisions we did to separate them anyway. But that's sort of why those became part of it. But those families don't even know those houses are around the corner because they're kind of in an L-shaped. And we got our maintenance shop at the end of the village, and so you don't really, unless you drive all the way around the corner, you don't really see those homes sitting there, really. So it's not like that they're associated with the village at all. That answers the question.
Okay, and we'll move to the next question. Has the pod-style architecture been beneficial in terms of interaction of the residents?
Yes. It's one of the best features that we have done because it connects those families and those moms that have no connection because these guys are asked to give us a list of people that are going to be on your list. And to be honest, half of these families have nobody on their list because none of their relatives are clean, so they can't come visit them. So they created so their family becomes the family across the street next to them. So they're always asking, looking out for their children, hey, I'm going to run to the store, can you watch my child, and they're all right there together because they walk out and their porches are right across from each other. So they all kind of create that, it's funny listening to families on Wednesday nights. They're like, yeah, we got the coolest pot out here, And so it's those 4 single moms, that are doing the program. And so, it's a lot of fun in the wintertime because it rains up here in the Northwest. And so the kids are out there in the covered area riding their little tricycles. And, that's been another cool feature is having that big covered area, because up here in the Northwest we get a lot of rain. So.
Okay. And what is the vacancy rate?
Vacancy rate, well, we're still, if we pop at the Schlangen, we're still trying to fill it up, so we're at 30 families out of 45, so we have 15 more units to go. But if we don't, the vacancy, we had one family moved, transferred, and that created a vacancy, and then we had a couple of people have to leave the program. So those become vacancies, but otherwise, if you're looking at our whole housing stock, we probably have, we're probably screening every month for some vacancies we have, but these are the homes, some of these vacancies that we have, people either move out or they might have got it kicked out and then the home tested positive for meth. So we got a lot of homes right here we're cleaning up with meth right now is why we have a lot of vacancies outside the village. If we're just talking about our other housing developments, we have a lot of those that are boarded up because we have to get in there and clean them up and clean up the meth.
Okay, and we have a comment here. This is a wonderful model and so well thought out. Thank you for sharing. Okay, and our next question. Do UA all of the people going to the parenting class housed at your community center by non-tenants?
Yes, because the people that are going to the people that are trying to get into the program get UA'd right off the get-go, and that because they have to get UA'd in order to come to those meetings on Wednesday nights. And so those are the ones that participate in the parenting ones. Nobody outside of the wraparound are going to the parenting that they're hosting there at the community. When they host the parenting one, they're hosting them for everybody that lives in the village or trying to get into the village. So everybody has been UA'd, and even the professionals that go there get UA'd, through LIBC. So they make sure they're all UA'd and letting us know that they're all cleared to be there as clinicians and professionals going there that are hosting different meetings.
All right. Can you describe how the mental health specialist, John, influenced the project and housing design at the village?
He's I always give him the credit. He's got the knowledge, he's got just those words of the mental health that expired this whole thing, and then I would go and I'd probably even get mental health from him. I'd just go and tell him about my day and he'd just, smile. And he just, when I told him about, the pressure I was getting from everybody in the council about, wanting a bunch of homes set aside, I said, they have no clue what they would do with these homes. And so he knew I had a development on the horizon, and he's just like, how cool would it be to develop a project with a bunch of array of services that we can do out of it? And I said, what are you talking about? And he goes, wraparound. And I go, I went to a wraparound meeting 5 years ago with a bunch of people sitting in it, and I said, Behavioral Health Stamp should put it on, and I can't remember the name of the program, Systems of Care. And I sat here and I had no idea what they were talking about, and I walked away and I was given something to do and bring it back to the next meeting. We went back in 2 weeks, and so I sent what I had to do into them, and the one that was hosting it said, hey, Diane Housing is the only one that responded to what we needed to do. No one else responded. And so that was the 2 wraparound meetings, and they never had another one in about a year and a half. I never had another one. And he said, that's because Systems of Care is wraparound. And I said, oh. And so he goes, so this is what wraparound is. And so he just was able to really explain what it was and said, we have a chance to make something unique, And so so I had to give him a lot of credit because he says, we need to get away from transitional. How about transformational? And I was like, hey, I like it. So that's where we call it transformational, not transitional. So when people hear that, they feel less stigma than saying it as transitional. So he's been a big part. I mean, my hands had to go up to him. I mean, I would have never done this without him. You know, so he's been a big part of this through the whole steps, even though he likes me to take the credit. He's really been the big inspirer for this, you know. And I told him because he can't be here today, he's going to get all the credit for this, you know. But yeah, so he's been a big part of this whole thing.
Okay, as a reminder, you can press #2 on your telephone keypad if you do have a verbal question, or select all panelists on the Send To drop-down menu of the chat panel in the WebEx in order to ask a written question. And we are currently awaiting any input. And I'm not currently seeing any additional questions coming through.
Thanks, Marvin. I believe there was one more question that we are getting clarification on, and I think it says, are there any HIPAA issues with group meetings, HIPAA privacy issues?
No, in the regular wraparound, we always make sure that they have a release in our clinician meetings on Thursdays. Wednesdays, it's them there, it's the families there that share. If they want to share stuff amongst each other, they can share stuff because they're actually the ones that are in the room on the Wednesday group meetings. But on the wraparound meeting, we can't discuss anybody. Everybody makes sure that there's a release form for this to bring this name forward. Or they'll say, you know, hey, I got a name, but I haven't got a release, but I'll bring it up next week. And so everybody's really careful about doing that. And anybody that goes through an assessment, John makes sure that he signs, they get all the forms signed off. So that's real helpful there.
Great. Are there any more questions?
And I'm seeing no additional questions.
Great. Thank you very much. Well, this is Heidi again. Diana, I want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Thank you so much for sharing this wonderful project that you're doing and being willing to answer lots of great questions, providing, you know, straightforward insight, and also sharing some of the challenges that you've had as you undertake this great work. Wanted to point out to participants that we have a webinar and case study that we will be posting shortly on the Office of Native American Programs homepage at Code Talk. And also really encourage all of you to submit comments on what you thought about today's first webinar on best practices. Want to know what you liked, what we can improve on, suggestions for future webinars, and also, of course, if there's any good words for Diana's and John's great work on this project. So again, Wawanan, thank you all so very much for attending, and look forward to connecting with all of you in the future.
Thank you for joining today's conference. The session is now concluded, and you may disconnect.